What's happening, world? Sebastian back here with Spin Driving School. Bit of a different video. My recent trip to Ontario, and I did a little bit of driving out there. It's been a few years, so we'll just talk about that. Talk about different speed limits, different signage, different rules. So your typical residential area in Ontario, I would say, at least in this part of Ontario, St. Catharines, Niagara region. A little bit of a police presence. There's always been cops in that neighborhood. Average speed limit of 30 to 40 kilometers in these areas. You're still gonna have your typical two-way, four-way intersections. A lot of all-way stops instead of four-way stops in Ontario. This one did not have a stop line. Very poor driving though, and a lot of times I actually didn't bring my camera with me, so I didn't catch a lot of the bad driving on camera, but just take my word for it. People like to signal very late. Speed limits in school zones in Ontario generally a little bit higher, so at 40 kilometers, and they do have signs in most cases that tell you when school zones actually end in a different way than they do in BC. In BC, you have to look for the back of the sign, where here usually you have a change in speed limit, or it says a certain speed limit ends as another one begins. So in this case, you'll have a end of 40, and then usually there'll be a 50-kilometer sign preceding the so-called school zone sign. There you go on the top right. So it's a lot easier, you don't have to look for the back of the sign, and I don't know, I think it's just more straightforward. At least in this city and most of the cities in the Niagara region, to my knowledge. So there's an always stop, so always and four-ways are generally the same. We do have always stops in BC, and there's a few in Burnaby and the Vancouver area as well, but more common are four-way or three-way stops. In the British of the Columbia, just following a bus, another always stop. With buses, the rules are generally the same. In most provinces, you do have to yield to them by law. Either way, give them lots of space and distance. Generally, that would be preferred. So we're just cruising down these residential streets. Another thing to be told about Ontario versus BC and a lot of other provinces, it's pretty flat, so you don't have the hills and mountains that we have to deal with here and face, and in certain conditions those things can be quite treacherous depending on your elevation and where you are and your skill level of driving. Again, if you see, there are no stop lines. So a lot of these two-ways and some four-ways too do not have stop lines for whatever reason. And there's a lot of rolling stops for that. So the way you drive and the way that the signage is placed and how it's placed and what it means is maybe not what it means, but those things are a little bit different in other provinces, and that's why I'm making this video. I've lived in Ontario for over 10 years, so I'm pretty familiar with these roads and the rules for the most part. Some speed limits have been brought up, like on the highway in certain sections, they have been brought up to 110 kilometers, which we'll get into that in a bit, as I will go on the highway for a short period of time. For now, we're just cruising down this somewhat main artery in the city of St. Catharines. And this was a weekend, so traffic was pretty mild. However, traffic in this city particularly is pretty good for the most part. You know, it's a small city, maybe around 150,000 residents, so it doesn't get too backed up and clogged up like what we're used to here in Vancouver, Burnaby, and the Tri-Cities. I mean, it's just an absolute shit show what is going on in the Lower Mainland, traffic and driving wise. So we'll go through a couple more school zones coming up here, and these school marked crosswalks as well, though a lot of crosswalks in St. Catharines do have that fluorescent green color anyways. And as you will see very shortly, the school zones will be at 40 once more. So the general speed limit in school zones in Ontario, at least in this city, St. Catharines, is 40. And, you know, I don't go through every single school, so. And the ones that I've seen, and from what I remember living there and driving through different cities and different municipalities and whatnot, there were always signs on the opposing side or on the same side facing you, letting you know when the speed limit changes. So there you go, 40 to 50. It's not as much of a struggle as it is here. And a lot of school and park zones also don't always have double yellow lines, which means technically you can pass in these, which is also a little bit strange and unusual and very uncommon to specifically to British Columbia. Most school and park zones do have double yellow lines in BC, so that's another thing that in Ontario, at least in this city, there you go, there's no double yellow line here, and we just went through a school zone. It's a little bit different. We're gonna get stuck behind this bus here a few times just to prove a point, just to show, you know, if you're doing your road test in Ontario, it doesn't matter where you're doing your road test, yield to Z-Bus. Now, again, there's no double yellow line here. If you go around safely, sure, that's fine, but there's multiple vehicles in front of you. There was actually a car behind me, which I didn't have a back camera in this car, that was trying to pass me onto oncoming traffic, so she decided to stop from doing that because that was rather a stupid move on her part to pass me onto oncoming traffic with a bus and another car in front of me. But anyways, it does happen, but I'll be yielding to the bus here on multiple occasions, so adhere to the rules at your own risk, I guess. That's what I do. Also, just a side note, in a lot of these videos, which you can't see unfortunately because the camera was always on the outside, however, I was driving multiple vehicles, small and big, so that's another thing. You know, I'm driving in a different province, driving different cars, but there's really no adjustment period with my level of driving experience, I guess, and a lot of different vehicles that I've driven over the years. So, you know, the more you drive, the more comfortable and confident you will feel with it, and driving different cars isn't really, there's the popo again. Driving, it's not really going to make a huge difference. I mean, unless you're going from like an electric car to gas car, but even from going from manual to to automatic, it's, you know, I don't know. Going on the highway, so we're merging onto the highway now. I was going against the sun, so the visibility, or rather the quality of the picture, not as good as it could have been, mainly because of the glare. But on the way back it was already dark, so I scrapped that video. But anyways, the speed limit still here is 100. And eventually, once you get a little bit further out into Grimsby area outside of the Niagara region, it goes up to 110, and then it goes up and down through parts of Ontario. So that's another major difference between at least the lower mainland and parts of Ontario, where the speed limit is going to be usually a lot higher than what we're used to here, especially throughout the lower mainland, where for us it's from North Van from 70, yes, that's 70, to 80, to mostly 90, until you hit Surrey, and then it goes up to 100, and then eventually to 110. But I think we have the lowest speed limit on the highway throughout the lower mainland out of all of Canada. I might be wrong, but I think that is correct, which is sad and embarrassing, and it's dangerous. I mean, usually people drive faster than that anyways, but sometimes people drive 80 or 70 on the highway for no reason, especially around curves. I mean, it's just preposterous. But we've exited off the highway. Just like any other province, you'll have your recommended speeds, and now we're moving our way through the city, back into the city, into Port Elizabeth, which is the kind of the touristy area where people go for ice cream and go to the pier and go for a walk. And there's a beach, and used to be a very heavy bar scene back in the days. However, now it's a little bit different. So we're just making our way through there. The general speed limit is 50, as it is in most cities in Canada. That is your average general speed limit, unless otherwise posted, is going to be 50. So we're just making our way into the old town, and we're gonna go for a walk. However, we are going to, and as we, I mean my parents, and also as we, I mean the audience, we are going to continue on this journey throughout St. Catharines and bit of a Niagara region. So now we are going through one of the bridges. I believe there are 7 or 8 bridges throughout the St. Catharines region. I think there's 7. So yeah, multiple bridges. They are part of the Welland Canal system. So basically, all the ships who go through lakes and then eventually oceans, etc., rivers, yada yada yada, have to go through this canal. And sometimes, there's a 70-kilometer speed limit on the outskirts of the city. So again, speed limits are going to be posted if otherwise it's not 50. So you have to go through multiple canals, sometimes depending on where you're going, and sometimes, you get stuck. Now, actually, they do have a radio system that tells you which bridge is open and when it's going to be open, and so on and so forth. But back in the days, you were going somewhere, and you get stuck on the bridge, and sometimes you wouldn't be able to go out or back up, so you get stuck, and it is what it is. 10-15 minutes, sometimes multiple ships, sometimes it could be pain in the ass. But that's kind of the beauty of St. Catharines and a lot of these cities that are laid along the canal, with these different bridges, and they operate in different ways. So we have another bridge here going through the canal. If you see on the right, that's the main, I think it's the Skyway Bridge, I think they call it. I forget. St. Catharines connects Niagara and gets to the, Niagara Falls and into the border. We're really close to the New York border, so you have your New York side of Niagara on the lake and Niagara Falls there, or Niagara Falls rather. Now we are making our way into downtown St. Catharines, and yeah, so we're just heading through there. We've got a bike lane, some occupants, driving through a cemetery. This is a very popular cemetery, kind of a central focal point of St. Catharines. It's all 50. And again, we are making our way downtown. So a lot of single lane roads, pretty much most. There's few double lane, but it's not very common, at least in St. Catharines, because again, it is a fairly small city with a quote-unquote small population. Very low to medium traffic, so we're breezing. You know, weekday to weekend driving can be a little bit different. Obviously, that's going to happen in any city, but for the most part, it's very mild. It's not that I forgot, but you know, after I haven't been there in about 4 years, so after driving in this horrific traffic in these conditions here in BC, it was very refreshing and kind of a break to drive in the city where still fair amount of bad driving, but less traffic and a little less frustrating. So this is kind of the old part of downtown. We're gonna slowly make our way into the newer, supposedly more vibrant. However, it was not very happening at nighttime. Used to be back in the days, but now it's anyways. So you see all single lane traffic. You know, most of the intersections are smallish on the smaller side. A lot of them now do actually have green turn arrows, so that is something that I was also kind of surprised by, but which is great. I'm not complaining, just I didn't expect that after years of not having those. Now a lot of them have been upgraded. And we're cruising. There you go. There's another school zone, 40 kilometer speed limit. And this is essentially, you know, going into the core of downtown of St. Catharines. So another always stop. There's a speed limit continue on 40. And I think the 40 continues here. Another always stop, all-way, four-way, all-way. Same thing, same deal. Doesn't matter where you are, all-way stops are basically four-way stops. Maybe three-way, just as many roads as you have, everyone has to stop and treat the stop sign as it's for them. Another one. We got the bus station on the left-hand side. Got a library on the right. There's a police station nearby, if you're interested. There's a library on the left, Popo on the right. And now we're just driving through the main downtown section. And you see and I think this was on a weekday. I believe this was a Wednesday morning or / afternoon. Yeah, afternoon, after lunch. And it's pretty dead, so at nighttime it's a sad scene at this point. Maybe I just came at the wrong time. Not sure. We'll be turning left here at the lights very shortly, making our way through some more older parts of St. Catharines, and that's that. Like I said, I didn't really do a lot of filming. I could have, should have, but I was just trying to enjoy my time with my parents more so. I'm still surprised that I did as much filming as I did, so we're turning left here at the lights. Another thing that was very noticeable is the homeless aspect. There's always been homeless people in St. Catharines, you know, in most cities, but this time around it's gotten bad, so not as bad as here. There's a green arrow. Yep, you gotta yield to me there, buddy. If you're turning right on the red light, doesn't matter which lane I'm turning into, you still should be yielding. So this is one of the few double lane roads in St. Kitts, and we are making our way through some more residential neighborhoods. Maybe not necessarily residential, but kind of has that vibe to it. This is actually one of my favorite parts of St. Catharines. So this is still all 50. Again, if you're paying attention, not a lot of stop lines at these two-way intersections, which it is intentional. And we'll have some naughty driving. Last but not least but not last, just a little U-turn, you know, your typical fashion Vancouver driving, even though we're not in Vancouver, or at least in this video. So, you know, bad drivers are everywhere, but again, I was kind of taken aback by the lack of signaling and how late people signal. And yeah, that's probably one of my biggest pet peeves. Other than that, good time. So thank you for checking it out if you have, and we'll see you in another video, folks. Stay tuned.